This video is about self-help reading for viewpoints. Let me give you two opinions. Person A says working from home can improve people's quality of life because they spend less time commuting. And person B says working from home can improve people's quality of life because employees have greater control over their schedules. Now imagine self-help gives you the statement, okay? This person believes remote work gives employees more independence. Who said it? Person A or B? Now, if you answered B, good. But here's the interesting part. Both people are positive about working from home. Both people believe it can improve people's lives. Both people are talking about exactly the same topic. And yet, only one person owns that particular idea. And that is where people lose marks in reading for viewpoints. Welcome to the task I like to call Who Owns This Idea? Because in this part of self reading test, you are not simply reading for information. You're not looking for a date, you're not looking for a location, you're not trying to understand a process. Here, you are entering an argument. And inside that argument, you have to figure out who supports what, who disagrees with what, who agrees but for a completely different reason, and most importantly, who actually owns the idea in question. Because two people can stand on the same side without thinking the same thing. And this is exactly what we are going to master today. Okay? Let's get something straight. Reading for viewpoints is not simply person A agrees, person B disagrees. If only it were that easy, self can give you two people who both agree, both disagree, partially agree, agree on the problem but disagree on the solution, support the same idea for different reasons, or disagree with each other without ever directly saying, I disagree with you. That last one is especially dangerous. I disagree with you because sometimes person A says the government should spend more money on public transportation, and person B says before increasing funding, cities need to improve how existing transportation systems are managed. Here, person B never says, I disagree with person A, right? But do they have the same viewpoint? Not exactly. So, we are going to stop reading viewpoints like two separate reading passages. Instead, imagine this. Person A and person B are sitting in a debate room, and every statement you see is an idea floating in the middle. And your job is to ask whose chair should this idea sit in? Person A's or person B's or both? Because sometimes self-help is testing whether you can recognize that two people actually share the same idea. So forget find matching words, forget look for the same sentence. Instead, you have to use something much more useful. Okay? Every opinion has a fingerprint. Let's look at two statements. Person A is telling schools should begin later because teenagers need more sleep. And person B saying like schools should begin later because students would be more alert and productive in class. Now, both of them want later school starting times. That is the surface position, but their fingerprints are different. Person A's fingerprint is health and rest, but person B's fingerprint is performance and learning. Now imagine the question says, this person is concerned about students' physical well being. Who owns that idea? Person A. Imagine the question says, this person believes students could perform better academically. Person B. And now imagine this. This person supports delaying the start of the school day. Answer is both. Do you see what happened here? The same topic can have a shared destination but different roads. And self-help loves testing those roads. So when you read each viewpoint, don't just ask, do they agree or disagree? You have to ask, what is their reason? Because the reason often identifies the owner. Okay? Now, let's do an example here. So this one, the topic is about Should cities restrict private cars in busy downtown areas? So we have two viewpoints. I want you to listen carefully, not like a student reading a passage. I want you to imagine you are listening to two people arguing over coffee. Ready? Okay. Now, Maya is saying that cities should introduce stronger restrictions on private vehicles in busy downtown areas. Traffic congestion is not simply an inconvenience, it also contributes to air pollution and makes cities less pleasant for pedestrians. Opponents often argue that limiting cars would make it difficult for people to reach businesses. But I believe cities can address this concern by improving public transportation. In fact, reducing the number of cars could make downtown areas more attractive places to shop and spend time. However, restrictions should be introduced gradually so that residents and businesses have time to adjust. Now, let's read Daniel's viewpoints. Although reducing traffic congestion is an important goal, restricting private vehicles is not necessarily the best solution. Many people do not have convenient access to reliable public transportation, particularly those who live outside city centers. Instead of discouraging drivers, cities should invest in smarter traffic systems and encourage employers to offer flexible working arrangements. I agree that downtown areas should become cleaner and more enjoyable, but policy should not create additional difficulties for people who depend on their cars. Now, you read the two viewpoints, right? Now, pause. Do not try to memorize every sentence. That's the first trap. You do not need to carry the entire passage around in your head like a suitcase. Instead, we are going to create two identities. Let's start with Maya. If I asked you, what is Maya's overall position? You could say, Maya supports stronger restrictions on private cars. Good. But that's not enough. We need her fingerprint. Why does she support restrictions? Let's look. She mentions traffic congestion, pollution, right? Pedestrians, making downtown more attractive, improving public transportation. So, if I had to give Maya a personality badge, it would be make the city better to live in. That is Maya's identity, right? She sees fewer cars as an opportunity to improve the environment, public spaces, the downtown experience. But notice something else. She's not saying ban all cars tomorrow morning. Good luck, everyone. No, she also says restrictions should be introduced gradually. That is another fingerprint. So Maya is supportive but gradual. If you look at Daniel, Daniel agrees that traffic is a problem. He says cities should be cleaner, downtown areas should be enjoyable. So be careful. Daniel is not saying cars are perfect. Leave everything exactly as it is. No, his fingerprint is different. He's concerned about people who depend on cars, people without good public transportation, practical difficulties, and he's concerned about alternative solutions. So, Daniel's badges fix the problem but don't punish the people. That is Daniel. Same problem, different philosophy. Maya restrict cars and improve alternatives, but Daniel improve alternatives before restricting cars. Now let's try our first question. Who believes that limiting cars, that means limiting vehicles, could improve the experience of spending time downtown? Maya, Daniel, or both speakers? Now don't answer yet. You have to investigate. The key idea is not private vehicles. Both people discuss cars. The key idea is not downtown. Both mention downtown areas, right? So the real idea is improving the experience of being downtown. Who talks about that? If you see Maya, she spoke about fewer cars could make downtown areas more attractive places to shop and spend time. That is almost exactly the same idea. So the answer is Maya. So if you simply match the word downtown, you could have chosen Daniel too, because Daniel also says downtown areas should be enjoyable. But the question here is Who connects that improvement specifically to limiting private vehicles? That's Maya, right? So remember, don't identify the topic. You have to identify the connection. That is a completely different skill. Okay? Now let's move on to the second question. Who believes that some people could be unfairly affected by restrictions on private vehicles? Maya, Daniel, or both? Think about the idea, not just the words. The phrase unfairly affected means who's worried that certain people might face difficulties, correct? Daniel talks about people outside city centers, unreliable public transportation, people who depend on cars, correct? So that is Daniel's concern. So the right answer is Daniel. And notice the passage may never use the exact phrase unfairly affected, but the meaning is there. This is where you have to stop being a word hunter and become an idea translator. Okay? So, when you see a question, don't ask, where did I see these words? Ask, who owns this idea? Because self-help may change the vocabulary, the sentence structure, the order of information, but the underlying viewpoint remains. Okay? Once you can identify the idea fingerprint, you are no longer chasing words around the passage. You are following the argument. And that is exactly what strong readers do. Got it? So that's all for today's video. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more self-help tips. See you in the next video. Bye bye.